Hello, friends. Welcome. This is day 2 of week 5, meaning that we have only got 4 more lectures until the exam goes live. So we are rocking and rolling. Um, Today is again a little bit lighter of one. We're going to finish up CRUD. We're going to look at a few things for CRUD and things that we're going to have to know, and things, and just kind of go through the different queries and show there's a couple different ways that we can do things. And I want to look at the documentation as well. So while we're looking at how do we do certain things, why do we do instead of update one, find by ID and update one, things like that. What are the differences and what are the things that we're going to have to pass through? I want to teach you guys also how to do this, so that way in the exam you can use documentation to actually look up what's going on, or dive into sort of what's going on. One thing I want to note is I'm actually just taking yesterday's code and building on top of that. So if you guys want a starting place, we're just going to do yesterday's code. I really just made a copy of this folder and then added on to some stuff. So that's all we have. A little bit of housekeeping. We have discussion questions due Sunday, as always. And then we have core assignments. We only have one, our jokes API. I think I might build this out tomorrow. I'm going to look and see if there's any practice ones that I can do. I don't think that there's a ton. I might build this out tomorrow. I'll make the decision for office hours. So if you guys do want to come to that, I will be building something. Again, can't guarantee that it's going to be jokes API, but hopefully it is something that is helpful for you guys. Cool. Any questions on housekeeping before we just jump in and get started? Awesome. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about, again, I know that Gray just did this for office hour. If you guys didn't attend office hour, that'll be uploaded. Usually it'll be the next day because Gray's got to download it, then send it to me, and then I've got to download it, and then we've got to put it up. And so it'll be up by tomorrow, by class tomorrow. But I do want to still go over, if you didn't attend office hour, which is totally okay, it's optional. I wanted to sort of do a breakdown of what we talked about yesterday, a breakdown of our code. Again, we built this code together. And so again, just talking about the folder structure, the different aspects of what we're doing. And then I want to talk about our create movie and our read all movies method. Those are the two things that we did and built. And then today, what we'll do is after we sort of walk through that for 10 or 15 minutes max, we're going to go through read one movie. So we're going to see how do we identify and just grab one singular movie and return that. We're going to talk about edit movie and then look at put and patch and see in sort of the difference there and then some different nuancy things. And then we're going to delete one movie. Once we do this, we'll have all of our CRUD material. We will have our read one, if we wanted to read one, if we want to read all of them, if we want to create, if we want to edit or update for CRUD, and then if we want to delete. So after this, you should understand CRUD fully and just have at least a base understanding of how do we do these certain things. Cool. So I just want to talk about, again, our recap of modularization is that we, instead of having everything in one main file, we are going to break it down into 4 other separate files. One's our config, our controllers, our models, and our routes. And within each of these, they're going to have their own particular file. In this case, our config is handling our connection to our database. Remember, we're using Mongoose to do that. And then here we have our actual connection string. We got this directly from the MongoDB connection string. And so remember, this part right here is the same thing as saying localhost. So if you do get confused there, they are the same thing, but in this connection string, I would move forward and do this. And then we are just either returning from our promise, we either are saying, hey, this is established, or there was an error, and then we are showing the error as well. That's what our config is doing. Now, can anybody tell me what exactly controllers does? Maybe you can put that in the chat or come off mute. Just as a reminder, what do our controllers really handle from a base perspective? Connects models to routes, sort of, right? We go from our route, goes to our controller, and then our controller has something that's associated with our model. And what exactly is that? I'm looking Yeah, exactly. It implements your CRUD functionality, right? It handles the CRUD. Basically, what it does is it handles what can your model do, right? And in this case, we're really dealing with CRUD stuff. But what can your model do? Now, one thing I do want to note is when we're looking at our controllers, you don't have to say movie.controller. It could be plural if you wanted. It could not have a dot right here if you didn't want. If you just want to call this movie controller with camel case, you could do that, and movie controllers. It's a little bit more flexible here, but what this will do is this will bring in my model from my movie, and then it does bring in our different functions. Now we can see this guy here. We can say find all movies, or we can create, if we wanted to create a movie. And this again is our function name for our actual export. And yesterday we actually talked about a few different ways that we could write sort of this file. If we didn't want to do module exports, there was a couple things that we could do. We could just basically say module export equals an object and then put all of these guys as keys. Could have done that at the end of this, or you could do it this way, or at the end of this, we could have just had our different functions and then say module export equals and then have an object that handled that. All of those would have worked fine. I like this because it doesn't get as confusing in my opinion. It's like readability as well, since they all work the same and there's not really an inherent difference in speed. This to me is easier to read. So it's like, okay, I know that this is just find all movies. I know that this is just create, but it's really personal preference at that point. Now, as a reminder, these find all movies are not things that we just randomly create. Or sorry, they are, that's a lie. These are what we randomly create. These guys right here, this movie dot, or model dot, this is a mongoose method, right? This is part of the queries from mongoose. So here I've got this documentation. I'm just going to go to the top because it has the list of all of them. Cool. Here, let me put this in our chat. Here's a list of all of the built-in, and you can see that we've got model dot, right? That's exactly what we're doing, but these are really the main ones we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on this find all the way to one and update. Now, there are other things that we could do, like exists, which I believe we just pass in a piece of information and it'll say, does this user exist or does this movie already exist? Maybe we want to run that. If we want to make sure that there's no duplicates, right? If somebody's creating a movie for Harry Potter, I don't want my database to be filled with all the different types of different types of typing, or even just if they're the exact same thing. I don't want to allow that to create multiples, and we'll do that whenever we actually build out our functionality. But this exists is a built-in function as well. All of these are built in. All of these are you're able to use, whether you want to aggregate or you want to do a bunch of different things. This create, which is what we're doing. If you want to delete one, we can handle that. All of these find one and delete. Now, we'll probably use the find one and delete. I think the platform does this delete one, so we can kind of look at both. They're doing basically the same thing, but we can look at the different values or the different things that we want to do. So here is all of the built-in methods that we have, right? And again, just to reiterate, this guy right here, this movie is our model, right? That's what we're bringing in up here. If I would have called this unicorn, I would say unicorn.find or unicorn.create. But this is really just a model. And so you can look at here where it says model dot, that's just replacing. So our movie model is movie dot events or movie dot exists, right? So we're taking that model and here's the built-in functionality that we have. Now these guys, these top ones are what we create. We can call this anything. If we want to call this unicorn and cupcakes, we could. Wouldn't make sense, wouldn't be good development, but we can totally call those whatever we want. It's just these guys right here, this an actual database connection, or these database methods, or these methods that handle our query. Those must be exactly how Mongoose has them. Cool. Now, our model, we've talked a little bit about it. Just want to go over it again real fast. Here we are still bringing in Mongoose because we want to create a model of this. And here we create our schema. Our schema is what? Does anybody remember? Our schema is, think about like
Blueprint.
building a house. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Bear. I think that was Bear. If it wasn't, please write in chat and then I will give that person kudos. But yeah, it was, it's our blueprint, right? It is what it's supposed to look like. In this case, we have 3 aspects, or technically 5, but I only see 3. So where could the other 2 come from? From here, what are the other 2 things that the schema has? It has a title, a genre, and a year, and what else?
The ID and timestamp.
Oh yeah, so I guess 3 different things, right? Thanks, Tyler. It has our ID, and then it has our timestamps. Anybody tell me what are the 2 timestamps keys that I'm gonna get?
It's created at and updated at, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. What? Just so we know, what would be important? Like, why are those important? Anybody have any ideas? What can we use that for? Any real world understandings of why created at and updated at actually makes sense? Sorting, that could be something. Anniversaries, yeah, exactly, Tyler. If you're like, hey, I've been here for a year now, that's great. To show when a tweet was created, yep, chronological order. Yeah, all of these things could be used for sure. Exactly, like Grant, when a tweet's created, maybe we're going to take that timestamp. You could also think of like a password, right? If we have some sort of date that password can only, for like security perspectives, can only be living for 90 days. We could see, well, when was the last time this was updated? Now there might be a couple different things that we changed there, but that might be something that, okay, if this is past 90 days that this entire instance was updated, then we can know that our password is out of date, right, and out of compliance. So that's another one that we could do. Exactly, from a social media perspective, if we're dealing with when something was created, in the sense of when was a tweet created or a post or anything like that, those are great things to know as well. And in case anything does change, right, we want to say, well, what was the last time that this was changed? Or, you know, if somebody's account looks weird and they go in and they go, oh, it looks like you changed it today, and they're like, I didn't jump into my account today, right? Then that can be something that we can help monitor and catch some suspicious activity if necessary. Now, you probably have some things set up that has, I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, but if you travel maybe outside the country or travel somewhere that's not unique, maybe your bank card will automatically shut it down, right? And shut down because they think that your card number got stolen if you were to travel overseas or something. And so there's things that are like watchers, if you will, to see if there's unique activity. So we can use those timestamps as well with that to kind of make sure that our user and our user experience is good and great. So absolutely. And at the end of this, so we have these timestamps is true. Now there's 2 things that I brought up yesterday. If I wanted to change my collection name, where would I put that? Anybody remember? Not in your config, but good idea. Anybody?
Is it on line
All you'd have to
24?
do is right here, you'd put collection. And you could see, oh, I don't need this, but collection. If I wanted to change it, and then I could say something like movies. This would name my collection. Now, can anybody remember what is my collection? If I don't put this collection movies, which you don't have to, and I would say for right now, don't even worry about it. But if I didn't put that, does anybody remember where my collection name comes from? Yeah, line 24, right? Here I am creating my model, and it's creating my movie model, and it takes this word right here and makes it plural. Oops. Sure. Sorry, it takes this word and makes it plural. So if I am doing that, then if I don't want to put the collection thing, if I'm okay with it just being called movies, then I can do that right there as well. So very okay to do that. Oh my gosh, Postman has a mind of its own. I'm so sorry. Okay. Cool. Any questions on our model before I move on to this? Cool. All right. Node modules is node modules that is there. Make sure we have our get ignore to handle that. And the last thing we have is our routes, right? Our routes is really the traffic coordinator director of when this route is hit. Localhost 8000 / API / movie or 127.0.0.1 / 8:8000 / API / movies, then this does two things. First off, it says, what type of request is this? It wants to know first and foremost, what type? Is this a GET request? Is this a POST request, a PUT, a patch, or a delete? And then based off of that, based off the request type, it will direct it and say, okay, I want you to go to API / movies, and it's a GET request. Perfect. I want you to go into my movie controller, find the method called find all movies, and I want you to do that. If it is a POST and it's the same thing, I want you to go into movie controller and find create. So it is basically like our traffic controller for how our request to this API is going to work. Now, this is just a backend API, right? That's just how this works. That's what we're building. We're going to have some sort of database. In theory, somebody else could connect to our database outside of this if we were to host this and make it public. If we just had this big movie database, they could make a query. We could do the information, send it back to them, and we could host this and other people could use it if we wanted to. That's not what we're doing because we're going to have our own front end. But if somebody wanted to do that and bring in and just make requests, just like we did with React, in theory, they could do that exact thing as long as they had the correct path. Cool. So that is the setup of what we did. And lastly, we had our server.js where we have our Express and our app. You guys have seen this, so I don't need to go over that. We talked about that a couple times. Here, we're bringing in our config file. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that our database is connected. Here is if we're wanting to do our post requests. These are our middleware, just to make sure that we are allowed and able to handle that. Lastly, I need to bring in my routes and then pass it in my app, which is this guy right here. And then lastly, we just show and say we want to listen to port 8000. I could have had const port appear equal 8000, and the right here would be port, and right there would be port. But alas, we did not do that. Are there any questions on this setup piece and portion? Before we jump into the code today, we're just going to finish our CRUD. Pretty chill class. Any questions? Okay. All good. All right. So I want to add to my CRUD. I want to do read one movie. So let's go to our platform. Okay. So here, I'm just going to go off of the platform and then we can kind of go from there. And then we're going to just find a couple different things. Now, there's a couple things that we can do where if I want to find all users and I want all users that maybe, let's say that we had a thing of users and it was favorite food, or this would be a much better example for our project. Let's say I wanted to have, I want to get all of my comedy movies, right? And I just wanted to show the ones that are comedy. What I could do is I could use the .find, pass in the key of genre, and then that value is comedy. And then I will get all of my movies back. So let's actually go do that. Let's check a couple things. And we're just gonna, pretty easy day today. So let's come in here. Let's see what is in my DB first and foremost. So I've got three things. I've got Shrek, I've got Step Brothers, and I've got Walter Mitty. Now remember, Walter Mitty had the timestamps true, so that's why we have timestamps here, and we didn't have that yet for here. One thing I also want to point out is the validations. Sorry, just really quick. We were able to add in validations here where we can say that this is required. min length, max length, these are all, again, built in from Mongoose, sorry. So make sure that these are the exact same thing, like don't change the spelling or if you use camel case or something, make sure that it is the same so that way it knows and can associate. But okay, so we have these comedy ones. Now I just want to, I want to do something and I want to be able to pass in this find one or just find, sorry, where we can pass in a genre, right? And then we can pass in a genre, and then from that genre, we can make a request to get a specific genre. So how would I do that? How do you guys think I would do that? Where would I start here?
Go to your
What
controller.
Yeah, go to my controllers. And what am I going to type? I'm not going to type this. I am going to type module.exports. Dot, and then what do we want to call this? Maybe find one by genre. Sounds like a pretty good name. That's going to be equal to, we're going to have our request and response. Okay. I don't want to just do, I'm just going to find by genre. So I'm actually not going to do this find one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this movie.find where I am going to say, just like this, right? I'm going to pass in the key that I want. Now, in order for this to be dynamic, right, I could just say find all comedy and then just hard code this into comedy, but that doesn't really make sense, right? We want to be able to reuse this same method if I wanted action, if I wanted thriller, if I wanted comedy, if I wanted something else, right? And so what I can do is I can use this request rec.params. Remember, our request is a big object. In there, it's got some parameters or things that we pass in through our route. And then here, we're going to say that it was genre, and we'll see here in a second. And so it's going to take that value and then say, okay, I want all the ones that have the key of genre where it is comedy here. And then if it works, we're going to return, I'm actually just going to return movie. I don't want to return movie. And then if not, they're going to say something is wrong. So I've created this. What's my next step? Where would I go next? We've created the actual functionality piece. What's my next step?
You gotta go to your routes.
Routes.
Yeah, something's got to tell me where to look, right? So I'm going to say, you don't have to, it doesn't matter the version, but I'm going to say, or the order, sorry. I'm going to say API/movies, and this is called RESTful routing. So the fact that they all start the same, and then they just increasingly get more unique if necessary. And here I'm going to put the colon genre. Now, just as a reminder, when I have this colon genre, when I make my request, this is what becomes my key in my request file or my request object for my params. So this right here, when we're calling genre, is exactly what this is referring to. If I were to call this unicorn, then I would want to handle request.params.unicorn because then I would have a key of unicorn. In this case, I'm calling it genre. So now what should happen is I should be able to go to Postman, and then I should be able to say in my get /comedy, and then I should get a list of two things back. We'll see. And if not, then I broke it. Let's see. Oh, my server's not running. That's probably why. Chris, I see that your hand's up. Go ahead while I'm getting this up and running.
Yeah, you said that it didn't matter the order of the routes.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Like you could put your get with your, like some people like to put all their gets together.
Yeah, but could you have line 5 above line 4?
Let's check it.
I know, I
I know
thought
what
I
you're
read
saying,
or
Chris.
was told somewhere that you would kind of need like your anything that you're trying to specify, like genre or ID or whatever, you would want to put below something that's like more
Like a
concrete.
base URL.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
else if you were to just type in that route, that you're gonna have an issue trying to do now, I guess, line 5.
That's right. Because I do see that. I've tested it. I tested it like a week ago, and it was doing the same, like it was operating the same way. But let's
Oh,
just
okay.
test it out. So let's just test it out and we'll see. Okay, now my server's up and running. So first and foremost, let's just test this, right? Because this is what we're talking about, is this could break. Well, okay, cool. I'm able to get all of my movies. Now let's say comedy. And now, cool, I only get two movies. So it does look like it worked. But I do know what you're saying. It does talk a little bit about sometimes what can happen is if you have a route that is similar, it will just automatically infer and say, okay, cool, this is the route. And it sort of deals with the wrong routing. I've never experienced that, but I do know that that happens. So I understand what you're saying from
Okay.
a perspective of more unique. Yeah. But yeah, we just tested it and it works just fine. But what's kind of cool is we're able to do that, right? I'm able to pass in comedy. It takes that request.params value and then only returns to me a list or an array of the movies that have the genre comedy. Cool. So if I were to make a new movie, let's come here. Anybody have another movie that they like? That is maybe adventure, like an adventure movie?
Jumanji.
Jumanji.
Oh, that was a
Jumanji
good
is the
one.
best.
Tomb Raider, man. You're right there. That was a good choice back in the day.
All right, we'll do both. When was Jumanji come out? I don't know.
That was the old school one, not the most recent one. I mean, it's okay.
What? Yeah, I don't know. 1999. I don't know. I just made that up. Okay, let's send this. Great. So we created this. And then let's go ahead and do Tomb Raider as well. I have no
No.
idea when Tomb Raider came out. I'm going to say 2002. Cool. So now if I were to come here and I were to say adventure, now I get Walter Mitty, Jumanji, and Tomb Raider. So I'm able just to get the values that that we need. Now, Chris asked a great question. Let's test it out. Does this need to be case sensitive? Let's see. It does, right? So what is a way do you think that we could handle this? What's a quick way that we could?
To
Yeah,
underline.
exactly.
Can you do like the undercase to lower? There we go.
Yeah, we could do it to lower, right? So what if I said something like, let me look up. To lower, because I know JavaScript. I always get this one and the way Python handles it different. Okay, so it's string dot to lowercase.
Mongoose does it for you too.
It did not do it for us. Just now.
No. Like Mongoose has a validation called like to lower. But this you can do it that way. Or just if you want, you can do it that
Oh
way.
yeah, if you have that, if you want to look that up and then throw the code in the chat, then I can throw that.
Yeah.
But we could just say, let's see, I think it's to lowercase. Save this. And so what this is going to do is it's going to take this value and then it's going to run the to lowercase. So in theory now, what it should do is if I test this, it runs it. It'll take whatever this is, even if I have NT like this, it still runs it because it's just going to take this entire value. It's going to lowercase it all. So that's a great thing, Christopher. This is what we call like an edge case. What happens if this happens incorrectly? There's another way that you might want to build in, even if your people well, there's probably different ways that you'd want to build in. Like you wouldn't want your user to have to click on or type in adventure, right? Maybe there's a button or like an unordered list of different types, right? And you want to click on that, and then you handle, okay, once this is clicked, this is the path they go to, and then we make sure that it's taken care of. But that's a great example, Christopher, of things that we could do if there's a little edge case for us to get this and it still work, even if it is looking like this. So way to bring that up. Good job. Cool. So we're able to do that. We're able to find by genre. We're able to do that. Now there's another way that we can look up things, and this is really find by one. And this is a really popular and something we're going to need to do. So make sure that you can do this. I can guarantee for your exam, you're going to have to do this. Is we're going to do find one, and it's very similar, but instead of getting a list or an array of all of the objects that match this query, so in this case Jessica, or in our case adventure, what we do is we only want to retrieve one object. And I believe if we were to say adventure, let's just test it. I believe if we were to say adventure, it returns the first one, but let's check. I'm just going to change this to find one. I believe this just gets us the first one back. And so this is where we're gonna have to talk about something here in a second. So let's try this one more time. Cool. And it does, right? If I just say the find one and I pass in a value, right? A non-unique value. In this case, 3 different instances or 3 different pieces in our database have the genre of adventure. But if I just do this find one and I use a more generic indicator, then it's just going to return the first one. If I wanted something more specific, there's something I could do where I can either do find one and then pass in the ID, or Mongoose also already has a find one by ID. So both work. And so I would say find one by ID is obviously created for that, and we need to pass in an ID. Very simple right there, right? And so let's go ahead and let's build that out. So this is going to give me gives back an array of movies with same genre. Then I'm going to say, if we use the find one method, we'll get back the first movie with the same genre, but not all movies. Okay. So if we wanted just to get maybe one movie, right? And not by adventure would be too broad, but maybe we want to do RID, right? So I'm going to say module dot exports. I'm going to say dot find one by ID. I'm just making this up. Oops. By ID. Perfect. That's going to equal my request and my response. And then instead of doing find one, let's go ahead and test out our other one. Sorry. Let's test out this find by ID. So let's come here. I'm going to say find, not find one. I'm going to say find by ID. Perfect. In fact, I'm passing in my ID and my rec params ID. Now, there's one thing I want to point out here. When we're looking at Mongo, let me make this larger because I feel like it's very small. When we're looking at Mongo, it auto generates our ID for us, but please note that it does create this underscore ahead of that. And so what we're doing is we're saying, okay, I want you to find one by ID. Here's the key we're passing in. It has to be ID because we're using find one by ID. But this is our ID, and it has this underscore in front of it because that is in our Mongo database. That is what the field is called. That is what the key is. This guy, this rec params.id, again, remember this comes from my routes, which I haven't created yet. So this, in theory, could be unicorn. This one has to be underscore ID. Cool. So let's go make my route. So I'm going to say app.get I'm going to say /API/movies :ID. Now, again, this is the name. So therefore, in my controller, that is the key that I'm referring to, because whenever I have my request object and I get that back, there's going to be a key of params in there. And in that, there's going to be a key called ID, because that's my parameter name up here. And its value is going to be, that. What am I missing? Oh, I have something weird right here. Sorry, its value is going to be whatever I pass it, right? Cool. So now we're good to go. Fixed up. Let's go test it. Let's grab a value. Let's see. Let's refresh. Let's grab this guy. Let's do our Tomb Raider. Oh my goodness. I'll lose my mind. Okay. Let's test out and see how this works. Okay. So now I want to do our .get API/movies/some ID. Let's come here. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to say local host 8000 /API/movies/ and then I'm going to paste this ID here, and let's see what we get back. Movie is null. Movie is null. Let's see, what the heck did we do wrong? Find one by ID. We come here, we pass in our param. We get our movie, and we're giving back our movie, or we say something went wrong. Now, here's something that I would look at if I'm in my exam and I'm dealing with this. My status is 200 okay, which means that my request went through just fine. I actually received something back of movie where its value was null. So I'm wondering, did I mess up my route? That's the first thing I'm going to check. It should be API/movies/ID. So let's go to my request. I have localhost 8000 /API/movies/ID. Okay, so that seems fine. Now, the second thing is, did I mess this up? Did I mess this up? Let's see. Oh, is that right here? No, I didn't. It's a GET request, API movies, find one by ID. Giving me null. Let's go into the documentation. Finds a single document by its ID, find by ID, almost equivalent to find one. Okay, so let's test out another one and just see what the heck is going on. See if I messed up somewhere. Let's just test this guy. This is ID. Okay. Anybody see my error?
It says
API.
movies. Oh, Colette,
Hmm?
what's up?
Can you go back to the documentation for a minute?
Yeah.
So like where it says finds a single document by its ID field, doesn't that make it look like you just need to put in the ID? You don't need to do like the underscore ID. ID. Is
So
that how do you
I see
have,
what you're saying.
can I see the code again?
Yeah, so let's check.
So like,
So
yeah.
instead
you
of
just-
saying this,
yeah.
you're just saying, let's test it. Yeah. Because I just took that first piece from the, well, I think GitHub. Copilot did that. Okay. Let's try this. And then Grant might have a great point here. So let's see. Let's test this. That
Yeah,
is
what Grant
not
said.
it. I think what Grant said might be true. So
Yeah,
maybe we are going to run into this issue.
because the string.
Let's see. Yeah.
I think
but
you have to
then-
change the path name.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one
Mhm.
movie /ID. Because I think what Grant is saying is correct. And this is so funny because Chris and I were just talking about this. Because of this, these are both strings, right? We're
Mhm.
just assigning a value. And because this was below this, what was happening, and I'm going to delete this just to show. What was happening is we're getting here at this genre piece. And what it was doing is it was saying, okay, cool. I'm going to take this value because I'm just getting some string. Remember, it just knows it's dynamic. It doesn't know the difference between our ID string or the word comedy. It just assumes that. So then it's going and it's running find by genre and it's returning, and that should have been our first indicator. It's returning this, right? This movie piece. But now, if we were to just move this, and I were to run this, then I get back our actual movie. But now, if I were to say comedy, it's not going to work. Something went wrong. We have an error because it's thinking that the ID is comedy. And so we will need to change up our path structure if we're going to have these requests parameters in here, or if we're going to have these parameters in here. So, so somebody said, to avoid this, should we just name everything different? No, I would just get more descriptive. So you could say,
Mhm.
movie. So like one movie /ID. You could say like, by genre /genre. You could do something like that, and then this inherently will fix it. So now if I were to come here and I would say movies by genre /comedy, then now I get comedy because I'm doing the find one. I'm doing the find, so that's why I'm only getting one. Or I think I'm doing find one. Or if I wanted to do it by, what did I say this? One movie, sorry. One movie. And then I passed in this value. Then it's able to differentiate. Somebody asked, could you just write genre? You totally could.
Mhm.
Totally could.
Is there any RESTful routing with this, like a very specific naming convention we're supposed to follow, like there is with Java?
No, there's not. The idea behind RESTful routing here is that you sort of, the base is the same. So like localhost 8000 /API /movie / whatever you want to do.
Mhm.
But no, there's not inherently, like it's not strict in that. But you did see that if we tried to do the same GET request, but we had the same parameter, we'd have to create a differentiator. Or if I just did like this, then that would be just fine. That's what Alex was saying. And that would be just fine.
Thanks. That error would also come up if, Kelsey actually mentioned it there. If you change the ID to underscore ID, like in here, Will is using colon, like I just ID, but some folks may put in like underscore ID, whatever you put in as a params there, when you're doing in your controllers, you have to make sure that that matters. The underscore ID is what MongoDB gives you, but the second ID is what you named it in your routes. So if you're
Yeah.
ever wondering why, hey, why am I getting null? That could also be a reason. Obviously, this wasn't a reason, but I'm saying that I
Sure.
worked with this before. and this actually was the reason, so yeah.
Totally. Totally. Cool. Well, that was good little problem solving. Great. We got 15 minutes, so I always said, oh, it's not going to take that long, and then all of a sudden it took forever. So let's create a user, and actually let's update a record. So I'm going to use, let's go back to my handy dandy Mongoose stuff. And here I've got an update. So I have update 1, or I could use find 1 and update. Now let's look at find 1 and update, because it seems to be a little bit more intense than just find and update. And so let's check and see exactly what it has in there. So find 1 and update has a few different things. It has our conditions, our update, and then our options, right? The different things that we can do. So if I were to say find 1 and update, I pass in my conditions. This update, this second piece here is what do we want to update, or what do we want to update it to, right? So if I'm going to change the genre from adventure to comedy, then I'm going to put my key and my value in that, and then I'll pass in sort of that object, if you will. And then options is going to be a couple different things. There's really going to be 1, maybe 2 that we do in options, but you can see that there's quite a few things. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually just create an update. So I'm going to follow this. Let's just do this update 1, and then we'll go from there. We're not going to do this though. I'm not sure exactly why they do this on the platform, but let's go ahead and dive into our code. So I'm going to say update 1 movie. Now, in order for me to understand which movie I'm updating, I'm going to want to use this ID piece, right? Because just like you saw, if we were to just use this find 1, or if we were just to identify by just looking at 1, then I might have a list or an array of values that brought back, but maybe it's not the correct one. And so we want to use our unique identifier. And the most unique identifier we're ever going to have is our ID, because it is created and never, it's never replicated, and it's not replaced. So if you take out, or if we delete something by that ID, it doesn't go in and replace that. It just is a unique random string. So we want to use that. So let's actually dive in and see what we can do. So we're going to say movie dot, and then what do we want to use here? We said that we wanted to use this. Let's jump into here. We're going to use this find 1 and update. Cool. So I'm going to say find 1 and update. Cool. Now I've got to pass in some information. So here we can see, if I'm just looking at this, there's a couple things I need to do. I need to pass in what we're exactly looking for, what we're going to pass in, like what we're changing it to, and then lastly, any of these options. If we go to the platform here and we're looking at this guy here, I want to update 1. I'm going to say ID, right? And I'm going to pass in the ID that I want to do. So I want to grab that. So let's say, come here, we take in this key. So let's say, I'm going to say underscore ID equals rec dot params dot ID, because that's what we're going to call on our that's what we're going to call on our that's what we're going to call in our route. That's what we're going to handle, and we're going to grab that piece of information. Whenever we have it, we want to show our actual updated movie. We're going to have a dot catch. That's going to give us our error. Let's close this out. But there's a couple things I have to do as well, right? Because this is just going to grab my information, right? This is just going to grab the one I want to update, but I also have to pass in exactly what I'm doing, right? Or exactly what I want to update it to. So here are these 2 things that we need to handle. If I want to update, I guess let's talk about two different things. There's two ways I can update. I can use a dot put, and what a dot put requires is it's going to update the entire object to whatever we pass in. Right? It's going to update the entire thing to whatever we pass in, or we could do a dot patch, and dot patch will only update a portion of what we want. So if I'm going to use a dot put, then I have to pass in a full piece of information. I have to pass in every aspect of my information. If I'm going to use a dot patch, then I just have to pass in the piece that I want to change. Let's go ahead and do this. What this is doing, this is our option, right? So here right now, we are grabbing it by this ID. We are passing in, we're just going to use dot put, and we're going to test it. And we're going to pass in the request body. So when we make this request, we're going to have a body associated with it. Usually you'll have a form, right, when you're editing things. And what this new true is saying is it's saying when you return, like what this method is going to return is the new value that we've created, right? The new object, with the new values, it's not going to return the old one or the original value. Cool. So let's go. We need to create first my route. So I'm going to say app.put. We're going to say API/movies/update/ID. Perfect. I'm going to go into movie controllers and get updated movie. That works great. So now what I need to do is I need to go into Postman. I'm going to create a new one. This is going to be a dot put. So I'm going to actually just take this. I'm going to go into my body, my raw, JSON. Come here. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say local host 8,000, local host 8,000 /API/movies /update / and then we're going to pass in the ID, right? So API movies update ID. So I need to pass in some ID. So let's go ahead and grab, I think we're on Tomb Raider. So let's grab it. Let's grab this. And then now let's pass in the values. I'm just going to put edited. And let's see if this works. Perfect. So now I get this new value here. We've edited it, right? It takes in, and one thing I want to note is this created at and this ID, you don't have to pass these in because those were already generated by Mongo. So it's just whatever we sort of created. In this case is our title, genre, and year. And now if I come here and doesn't see anything, but if I refresh, I should see these are as edited. So I've officially edited my value in my database. Let's walk through that one more time. We create our route. We used put right here, where we're saying API movies update plus our ID. Come here, we're finding one and we're updating. We pass first in our unique identifier so we can get the one we want to edit and update. We're then passing in the values we want to update it to. And remember, because we use put, we have to have all of the values. And then lastly, we're saying, cool, I want you to return, if all is well, I want you to return the new object that I just sent you, right? This edited object, which is what it did. It sent us this edited object. Else, we're just going to have an error that said something went wrong, and it's an error. Cool. Now let's try to do this, but with patch. So I'm going to say update one movie by ID with patch. Perfect. Okay, so I'm actually going to comment this out so that way we don't get it confused. I'm going to say module exports update movie. I'm going to say movie dot find one and update. There's also find by ID and update. I'm not sure quite the difference there, but same sort of thing. You can look at the documentation and look at that. So I'm going to say underscore ID is our rec dot params dot ID, right? I'm also going to pass in this case, I want to take in my rec dot body. Oops. And then I'll talk about this run validators here in a second. I'm going to take in this rec dot body, but my body's only going to pass in one thing. I'm only going to pass in maybe like the genre I want to change. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to have a, I need to finish. That is good. Cool. So then I'm going to have a dot then. I'm going to have my updated movie and a dot catch. If there's an error, I'm going to close this off and we should be good to go. And then we'll talk about what that sign that was trying to show as well. App crashed, waiting. Let's see. Yeah. Unexpected token. Line 40, thank you. Cool. Now I need to go. My route can be the same thing. We're doing this update movie, so it's okay. So we can keep our route the same. These are saying the same thing. But now let's go in here and let's say patch. So instead of put, let's say patch. And instead of this, I just want to change my genre back. So let's come here. Let's delete this and delete this. I just want to change my genre to adventure. Oops. Now let's see if this works. It does not. Cannot patch API movies update.
Is it because it still says put on your routes? Do you need to change to patch on that?
That's exactly, yes, thanks, Bear. It's exactly what it is. It doesn't have that, right? So I'm gonna say patch. It's exactly it. Let's try again. Perfect. So now we're able just to delete this one field, or not delete, sorry, edit this one field versus having to edit everything. So that's just a big difference. Thank you, Bear. It is, we have to make sure that if you're dealing with put and patch, these are correct, right? I'll do the same thing. Yeah, we'll do this just for the sake of, if you wanted to do the other one, because when I push this code to GitHub, that way you have both. And we'll keep that other out. Cool. Any questions on updating anything or grabbing these values? One thing I did want to point out is it was wanting me to add in something here as well called run validators. Now, what that'll do is that will, in the same way that we have our validations here, if it'll check and say, okay, for genre, does this new value meet these requirements? Which is great, right? And that's a huge thing that we're going to want to do. We want to make sure that we prevent them from putting a, a one character genre or a max character, maybe they put 3 million words. We want to make sure that we can prevent that. So that's why that run validators was there. And what that's just another aspect that we can pass in. Like this new true, we say run validators, then it'll also go back to our model, find that associated key, and then it will run those validators associated with that new piece of information that we have, which is really sweet. Okay, any questions on this? And then we'll do delete super duper easy, and then we're done with CRUD officially. Any questions on this? Okay, so we're going to delete one movie by ID, and then I should probably just say find one movie by ID. Create a movie. Find all movies. Thank you. If you guys do have Copilot, I was kind of tested it out today. You can write documentation with it. If you click this, there's a little documentation tab. It's pretty sweet. And if you know something really, really well and how to do it in Python, if you don't know how to do it in JavaScript, you can actually put your code in there and it'll convert it to JavaScript, which is pretty elite. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing, module.exports delete movie. Now, again, when we're dealing with our delete movies, there's a couple of different things that we can do with that. We can do, I think that's find one by, so there's, we have delete one right here. I believe there's find and delete, find by ID and delete, or find one and delete. So there's a couple different options. Let's just sort of look at one. Delete one deletes the first document with the conditions from. So it's kind of similar to find or find one, right? Where it just gets the first one. Versus if we're dealing with something like find by ID and delete, that is really kind of shorthand, or that is going to be the one that's really going to make sure, okay, we know which one we're wanting to delete, and let's delete that. So I would say let's move on with find one by ID, but let's see, find one and delete. Issue a find one and delete, finds a matching document, returns a found document if any function trigger find one and delete. Yeah. So I think we can do either one, but this one, I think with the find one, you can pass in something that's not the ID, some other condition, but I would say let's work with just the ID. If I would, so let's do that. Find by ID and delete. Cool. So let's go to our code. And we're going to say, instead of this, we're going to say find by ID and delete. Perfect. Now I pass in my condition, i.e. I pass in the ID of the object that I want to delete. If that's true, then it's delete confirmation, and we have confirmation. Yes, this has been deleted. Or error, we have, or any sort of issue, we print our error. So let's go to this. We now need to make my route for this. So my app.delete. And then I'm going to say API/movies/delete/ID. I'm going to go into my movie controller, get my delete movie, which is what my function is called. Delete movie. Now, if I come here and I get one more, I'm going to pass in delete. I'm going to say localhost 8000/API/movies/delete/ and then what movie should we get rid of? Let's get rid of these top two, so that way all of our new ones can have timestamps. Let's come here. Put this. We should run this. Cool. So delete confirmation. This is what was deleted. So now if I come back to my database, I have 5. I refresh, I now only have 4, and Shrek is gone. I can do the same with Step Brothers. Cool, Step Brothers is now gone. I come here and I refresh. Now I just have these 3. But I can go in and create new ones if I wanted. So now we're able to create, read, update, delete. We're able to find one. We're able to get a list of objects back that from our collection that maybe match a certain criteria. So we said genre. We're able to edit the entire thing, or we're able to edit just a partial piece. So this is all of CRUD, and this is the sort of the crux of everything you're going to have to do. Really, if you can do this, if we can handle getting this request and giving our response back, all that's happening is, remember how we say Axios, and then we say Axios some URL, right? That's really all we're doing, is we're going to say Axios from our React side. We're going to have some piece of information. We're going to bundle it up, and we're going to say Axios dot get localhost 8000/API/movies. Our backend is going to do all this. It's going to give a response, and we're going to give it back to React, which will probably throw something in state. And then all of a sudden, we'll just be able to show it and be able to show it on our front end. And so this is how we are going to communicate. Our backend is complete. Then we're going to have our front end be able to communicate with it, and then we will be fully full stack. Okay, that's all I have for tonight. We were able to do all the different updates, delete, and a couple different things here. Are there any questions? Anything that doesn't quite make sense? Okay. Yeah, there's a one in the chat if this is making sense. All right, perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording here.